All right, we are live. IPS Evening Deprogram, June 23rd, 2025. Phones are open 505 510 4226. Open topics for the most part. The escalation has stopped, and I think that this picture is pretty much as extreme as it got, and then they just turned it around and it looks like a ceasefire. Iranian media shares photo of Trump with hair on fire in chilling warning after strikes. So it looks like they're also using AI. This one has Trump's head on a stick, and his hair's on fire, burning a flag. It's not a bad image. I don't know what they use. I don't think it's Mid-Journey. But shortly after this, the whole thing ended, and it kind of throws a monkey wrench in a lot of the hysteria with the the anti-war far right. The far right was just totally anti-war in Iran. And in that regard, they were in total agreement with the far woke left who were out on the streets protesting. In fact, there's a protest on Saturday against this war. New York has a protest, No War on Iran, June 26th. So hopefully Iran violates the ceasefire so they can go back to war and then they can protest it. But it looks like it might be over. Not sure what's going to happen with this protest. I'm sure they can just repurpose it to a different outrage. I mean, why would they cancel the event itself? These various issues are interchangeable and meaningless, ultimately meaningless. People are flipping out over this hypothetical situation that never comes true. It's always, they're 2 weeks away from building it, and apparently we were saved by Tom Cruise. If you caught all these articles about how we just lived through Top Gun Maverick, and that essentially the plot of the movie was doing what they just did, dropping bombs through the ventilation into the underground bunkers. Couple of other things. Breaking: shooting at Cross Point Community Church in Wayne, Michigan. This story was hyped up as a mass shooting. I saw a number of people saying it was mass casualty event. It was a Muslim attack on a church. All kinds of stuff go about, just different narratives as far as who's behind it. And it was just promoted as a big mass casualty event. And my approach to any of these things is to suspend judgment until the initial headlines blow past and you can get the actual facts. And it turns out nobody died. I watched the evacuation, and it was about as slow as a communion procession. No sense of urgency. They just slowly herded out the other side of the building. But when it comes down to it, nobody died. The would-be shooter was taken out. So it was a big nothing burger. But it was very much hyped up. And as I've noticed, and I pointed out here, when these big channels are completely wrong, they never go back and correct the record. There's no accountability here. Let's see what else we have here. Penguinati Auto Hoaxer says Israel will attack us and blame Iran. That's still in the card game. Yeah, I've heard that. A lot of people are expecting there to be a, quote, false flag, which don't actually exist. False flags are pretty much a hoax. The whole premise of the false flag is that the event is real, but somebody else did it. But they may do a staged fake event, which will be described as a false flag to one side, and it'll be treated as the official version by the other side. This is a setup for another 9/11. When will IPS create a PSYOP board game, says Jamarian May. A good question. So for those of you who ordered the PSYOP trading cards, those went out today. I went to the post office with about 30 packages. The tracking numbers were sent to your inbox, and the remaining sets have been put up for sale on eBay and Ko-Fi. So if you just got to go through your newsletter, you'll see the links. And immediately after the next 5 or 6 sets sell, I'm going to place an order for number 13 to 24. So then we'll have 24 cards in the set. And each month, I'll add another 12. And I think once we have the first 24, I'll start putting them in those card sleeves that you have to tear open. I don't know about bubble gum, but certainly a sticker would probably be added to the 24 cards. But yeah, I want to say thanks again to those of you who pre-ordered, because we got the ball rolling. So all I have to do is just essentially roll the profits back into it and reorder each month. And we will have in circulation PSYOP trading cards, all built on the premise of media fakery, not false flags, not the traditional Pentagon-sponsored and created conspiracy theories. Some people haven't figured this out yet, but the Pentagon admits that they made up all the Area 51 alien stuff. They made it up. And why this matters is that we have to look at the decades of entertainment and video games and books, science fiction. Look how influential government lies have been in culture. And it shows you how controlled it all is. I mean, think about it. The Pentagon created the science fiction genre as we understand it today. But anyway, people are just confused. Check this person out. This satellite has tracked the moon across the sky for the last 2 hours. They're using the moon for something. Well, that's Venus. And in New Jersey last January, many people misidentified Venus as an orb. There was a video of a woman in New Jersey praying to the orb, whispering to it about Jesus, and claiming it was speaking back to her, but clearly she was trying to do a ventriloquist thing. But the drone invasion of Jersey turned out to be Venus and a bunch of airplanes. That's it. I watched this documentary today, or this video, about how AI is becoming a religion for a lot of people, and there are a ton of people who believe they're interacting with something sentient. And there are many channels that are out there building audiences on this premise. We're talking gurus teaching people how to turn your AI sentient, how to invite beings to inhabit it, aliens even. It's in a way not that far different from like spiritualism and the kind of stuff that we saw, like, Ouija boards and seances, but it's all updated for the new age and people are mystifying it. And I often see people suggesting that AI has already existed and it was waiting for us to be ready for it, that it's an ancient technology. I heard this the other day and I'm like, we need to stop that. We need to stop pretending like AI is more than essentially a glorified search engine / word processor. Like it doesn't have any sentience. There's no room for it. And I think people are just falling into that trap of they're seeing something that seems so sophisticated that they think it must be the result of something higher than man. And Arthur C. Clarke had that law about this. Any sufficiently developed technology will be indistinguishable from magic. And a lot of people are, in fact, mystified by AI. And I suggested that they were going to introduce the concept of a personal God through AI. So you've got the Gaia, the globe construct, the world, which is kind of impersonal. But I thought at some point they're going to introduce the personal God. And it isn't just these fringies who are communicating with angels and aliens. There are some pretty normal people who are coming out talking about how ChatGPT has essentially become their BFF. And I'm not knocking it. I'm really not. But I think that a lot of people are being purposefully misled and preyed upon by unscrupulous types, but it's no different than any other religion. Jamarian May says, Area 51 is a great arcade game, though. Now, was that like a first-person shooter game? Wouldn't surprise me. I thought about the proliferation of first-person shooters, and I thought this might be part of the propaganda that feeds into the mass shooting scenarios, which are totally unbelievable. Who would believe that a 120-pound kid would kick down a door and successfully have 26 headshots, or 27 including his own? However the story goes, it was perfect. And that's not a believable scenario, but it is in the video game universe. So it seems to me that the video games, like the movies, can set people's expectations and prepare them to believe certain incredible, unbelievable things. Jamarian May says, I tend to agree AI is a medium from which unbodied can communicate. Well, the thing is, it's giving you answers based upon what's fed into it. It really is no more sentient than Microsoft Word. It really, I mean, you could make the argument that I guess you'd have to prove it, but my point being is that the needless mystification of AI is just as bad as the alien stuff. I think it's pushed by the government. I think it's purposeful misinformation. But no, the idea that it's somehow a medium for the unbodied, I mean, how would you explain that? I mean, it's like the Ouija board has, I think, a little more credibility because the Ouija board is implying that between everybody with their hands on the little heart-shaped block tracing out words, that they're somehow a medium through which the undead communicate, or the spirits. But there's no way a spirit, even if you could channel it, would communicate through generative predictive text in some way that would be indistinguishable from just the generative predictive text. How would you know the difference? So no, I don't think so. And what's happening is people are being led by their own cognitive bias, and it's kind of a self-reinforcing echo chamber. It's unfalsifiable, and it's not alarming to me because it's no different than people who are interacting with holy books. But I think we should just recognize it for what it is. It's a religious paradigm, and it's being promoted by likely the Pentagon. But a lot of people want to believe in aliens. They want to believe AI is aliens or AI is alive. But no, you're responding to propaganda. I mean, that's an Elon Musk endorsed idea. Whenever I hear people preach simulationism, I'm like, that's Musk's religion. Jamarian May says, if you understand how quantum computers operate, it makes a lot more sense. When somebody says quantum, I kind of think they fall. I dismiss that. I don't believe in the 100th monkey effect. I don't believe in the double slit experiment as evidence that the observer affects reality. I think these are all deliberate these are examples where the public is being mystified on purpose, where science has ceased being a methodology and now it's become part of a religious paradigm. And I think that's mystification. So no, I don't understand quantum computers. And I think in fact, if you look at the screen here, this is the first set of 12 PSYOP trading cards. You got dancing nurses, crisis dancers. But one of them here is the Mandela effect. And I put this one under the category of cognitive sabotage. So, we can debate whether or not AI is alive if you want to. It's a common misconception, but it's huge on TikTok. It really is. And I don't know if it's helpful. I'm not really sure how I feel about it necessarily. Is anybody here bothered by this trend or alarmed by the mystification of AI? Synchromorpheus found something interesting here. Many of you are likely already familiar with this particular piece of vintage 9/11 predictive programming. This is the one from, I believe it was, let me get the year right, 1968. Lawrence Wien, owner of the Empire State Building, put an advertisement in the New York Times that says, "The mountain comes to Manhattan." And what you have is an image of a plane flying into the Twin Towers, and it says, "The mountain comes to Manhattan." Interesting ad. But here's what Synchromorpheus wrote, which is the interesting part. He says, well, he explains the article contains an apparent rationalization for PSYOPs. Quote, "They'll say they're helping humanity by running these live drills and pretending they're real to force important issues onto the table to be preemptively solved before we have to experience the real tragedy and learn the hard way. That is the justification for mind war, by the way. But anyway, the title here, he says, when I searched the title, The Mountain Comes to Manhattan, I saw this. The phrase likely refers to a saying, if the mountain will not come to Muhammad, then Muhammad must go to the mountain. So that's kind of interesting when you look at the fact that the lead hijacker was Muhammad Atta, like Muhammad Attacks. We've talked about this interesting character, this 33-year-old who was the lead hijacker on that date. But again, the ad has the plane flying into the towers. The mountain comes to Manhattan. The phrase derives from, if the mountain will not come to Muhammad, Muhammad must go to the mountain. Very interesting reference. Again, it seems like a foreshadowing, but we're just doing some vintage 9/11 predictive programming analysis here. All right, let's continue. Jamarian May says, did you know that AI comes from us? They use our bodies to process the information. Again, that's what I'm talking about. Is there? It's a mystification of what is actually pretty mundane. And I'm trying to determine where this comes from. Eddie F says AI is nothing but overhyped software. No, it is. It's overhyped software, but people are responding to it in the way they respond to holy books. And a lot of people, and I think it's not a coincidence. I often talk about how aliens are a construct to replace angels. So the progressive utopianism built upon science replacing traditional religion still has the basic structure of the old paradigm, the old superstitions. And angels serve a certain purpose, as do the God constructs. And the weapons of mass destruction, for example, are what I would consider to be God constructs. But in this case, it seems like the AI is some kind of a replacement God. And a lot of people are falling for it. But when you get down to what it really is, so here's an example of the reasoning that I think that people are missing here. Like when you look at an iPhone, you can't possibly, one person, I mean, you might not, maybe you know someone who does, but most of us here looking at our phone would not be able to explain every single component and how it all works. But just because we can't explain everything about it doesn't mean that there is an alien inside or some kind of demon, some kind of genie on the inside of it. No, it just means we don't have the answers. And when it comes to what we are looking at with the AI generated art and videos and everything else, it is bewildering. But when it comes down to it, every single component within the iPhone is accounted for. Somebody's getting paid for it. Somebody designed it. There's nothing about it is anonymous. There's no aspect of it that wasn't there when they manufactured it. There's no like magical thing that just embodied into it. And it's the same thing here. I think people are mystifying it. It's just, my question is this intentional? I think it is. And if you're falling for it, that's fine. Not knocking it. But what I'm saying is it's likely a government engineered belief system. 777 says there are so many glowy influencers playing out fake lawsuits to distract and divide the woke right and left. Right. Well, it looks to me like the right is being split possibly on purpose. It could be the pendulum has to swing back the other way. And so they're just breaking it apart at the seams. But it really illustrates quite a bit about how rigid people are when they're in these boxes. And you can predict the fault lines. And I was talking about this woke right thing because I saw it being discussed. And it's blown up in recent weeks. But I already identified it. I called it red pill wokeism. And I was describing how the red pill trutherville concept of the world is a mirror of the extreme left. And I was really focusing on geoengineering versus climate change as one of the basic comparisons, but also the idea of having been awakened, red-pilled, and how there are these parallel systems. And lately I started noticing too, the way I've been describing this is that the red pill movement is a more mainstream version of the conspiracy theory that ultimately places Israel and Jews at the top, which is a mirror of the left's putting the whites and systemic racism on the top. So you have these oppression-based worldviews left and right. My point being, the red pill is a subset of the J pill. And I noticed a lot of the Hitler fans would lurk around the chat and they would say, when are you going to get into the real conspiracy? And they seem to think that their conspiracy was the real one and we're just playing with conspiracy candy. But eventually you'll find out, no, it's not the reptilians, it's the Rothschilds. Well, anyway, my point being, the J pill is the woke version that I was talking about. They've been awakened to this new lens through which to interpret world events, and everything must go through that lens. And that's what we mean by being awake. But my point being, both woke right and woke left are engineered paradigms, and it's interesting how they overlapped with their opinions about Iran. So the last few days have been quite revealing. Roxy W says, cannot assume all AI is the same. Right, well, I'm just suggesting here is that there are interests within the PSYOP entertainment complex that are specifically investing in getting people to believe that it is sentient, that it's like the alien invasion. And I pointed this out before. Maybe the alien invasion isn't going to be CIA agents in Halloween costumes, dressed up like Roswell aliens, but maybe the alien invasion will be AI. That they will convince the public that AI is in fact the, I guess, the alien invasion, that it's actually coming through somehow this takeover, like Skynet, for example, or Hell 9000. I don't hear a lot of people talk about William Gibson when they talk about the Matrix. The book, The Neuromancer, was part of a trilogy. It is where I think a lot of the style from the Matrix comes from. Neuromancer and Matrix have a lot of overlaps. I think that it's one of the main aesthetic sources for the whole Matrix appearance, the way that they look, the black shades, and the way he interacts with the Matrix when he figures out his powers. But the second book in the trilogy was called Count Zero. And it described this, it kind of had this parallel between the Agent Smith embodying the NPCs in the Matrix and how spirits can embody, or rather take possession of somebody. And in this book, Count Zero, the spirits are actually interacting with cyberspace and they're interfacing with the real world. It's kind of not far from what we're seeing with a lot of the recent sci-fi Black Mirror and stuff, but the idea of this overlap between cyberspace and the realm where these, I guess you would call it the non-corporeal beings. In that book, it was these specific spirits from the African pantheon. Oh, nice. Verkjon says, I just snagged a set. Yeah, I put 4 sets of the trading cards on eBay for those of you who aren't in America. Jamarid May says, you ever watched Transcendence? I haven't seen it, but I want to. That's the Johnny Depp movie. There is a lot of sci-fi content preparing us for this notion of sentient AI, and it goes way back. And everything about science fiction, I think it can be said, is government propaganda, and always has been. That's why so many of these science fiction writers are seemingly prophets. Got a couple quotes here. Tucker Carlson. Let's start with this. I wanted to play this yesterday, but I didn't get around to it. Here's Tucker describing how he was attacked by a demon in his bed. But I also want to point out that his Pentagon friends told him that aliens are demons. And this is an intriguing detail because for Tucker to call aliens demons reflects the partisan divide. because the side of the spectrum that isn't with the traditional religions and angels see aliens as saviors. So it's kind of interesting that the saviors to the atheistic left are immediately demonized by those who have the traditional views. But anyway, here is Tucker talking about how he was attacked by an alien slash demon in his bed.
Nope, in my bed at night, and I got attacked while I was asleep with my wife and 4 dogs in the bed and mauled. Physically mauled.
Physically mauled.
Spiritual attack by a demon?
Yeah, by a demon.
Yeah, by a demon. Physically mauled. And I've heard the entire interview, and he goes deeper until he even claims that he's got scars. He's got scars on his back. And for months I've been saying, show me the scars, Tucker. And nobody was paying attention to it. But in the last few days, a lot of people have been suggesting that this is kind of a red flag. Here's another quote by Tucker Carlson. Nuclear weapons are demonic. There's no upside to them at all. And anyone who claims otherwise is either ignorant or doing the bidding of the forces that created nuclear technology in the first place, which were not human forces, obviously. Not human forces. So demons, not human forces. Who is he pandering to? Because obviously there are people who believe this stuff. Jamarian says the aliens are fallen angels, not disembodied demons. Yeah, we have to get our terminology straight as well, because these words evolve. Demon didn't used to have a negative connotation. The idea of angels and demons, one of them having horns and one having wings. A lot of this stuff is kind of extra biblical, but as far as I'm concerned, I look at how the messaging is transmitted to the masses. And a lot of it's syncretic. It doesn't always have to be faithful to the original texts. I like the story of the fallen angels and the idea that a group of watchers, corrupted man, like this one taught them gambling, this one taught them war, this one taught the women to wear makeup, and this one taught them sorcery, and so on. And that these angels were punished for having corrupted man by being condemned to spend eternity here. And the whole story is about, it's in the book of Enoch. And he's sort of the intermediary where he's able to communicate between them and God doesn't want them back. And then, but part of the story is that there's a flood and the drowned Nephilim or spawn of angels and humans are still here, but they're disembodied. And so these are the things that are being communicated with when you're talking to ChatGPT or Ouija boards. But the idea that the origin of evil is fallen angel spirits wandering around is actually, I think it's a neat concept. I'm not sure how much of it I believe. I mean, I really don't believe, I don't take any of it literally necessarily, but I think these stories are interesting. But where do you draw the line? Some people will say, well, that book's not valid. Well, I'm sorry, but how can you say that book's not valid, but Noah is valid, and Noah's related to this guy? So it all seems interconnected, and it's very arbitrary. I think they should all be considered valid, especially the stories about the infancy, where Jesus is turning clay statues to life, or where he's a toddler, and he's taming the dragons in the cave. Like, I think all these stories should be out there. But the most interesting aspect to a lot of these holy texts, in my opinion, is the astrotheological components. How these stories are personifications of nature and the movement of the sun. That stuff to me is the most interesting part about it. And I have some books by Micah Dank that go into deep detail about this stuff. And I want to give it all a second look. Angst G says Transcendence, Lucy, Lawnmower Man, same movie. Right, that's right. Lawnmower Man, isn't that Stephen King? And Lucy's the one with Scarlett Johansson. But it's not a new concept. Hell 9000. So, and Hell 9000, of course, 2001 Space Odyssey. So this is very significant in terms of the meta script, as I call it here. And by the way, I'm producing a video as well as an ebook focusing on the meta script and defining it, so people know what I'm actually talking about. I mean, because to me, it's very simple. And so if a percentage of the news is fake, and the fake news are the main drivers of the news narratives of the day, and it's uncorrected, then it's safe to say that our news is bent in favor of special interests. Day after day, week after week, months to years, you have what's now a historical record. The news piles up and becomes history. And this goes back as far as we can see. This bending of history in a certain way. And the interests that I'm talking about, the special interests, the ones who frame it, are steering the course of human events with their psychological operations, the influence operations. That script is not only employed in the form of psyops on the world stage, but it also is executed through every propaganda vector, the entertainment in particular, the celebrity world. But it's concerted messaging on all fronts. And that script, which encompasses stories that take place over decades, that prepare us for things years in advance, is what I term the metascript. So the metascript is history's script. History, his story, well, he is Big Brother. Big Brother's history, his story. Verkjon says, another way it's described is that demons are the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim, which are the offspring of fallen angels mating with man. The Nephilim spirits were trapped on this plane. All of that is interesting to me. You know, I don't have a religion specifically, although I do find the ideas contained in Manichaeism to be very compelling and compatible with my lived experience. Like, I'm not a religious person, but I do believe that there is some fundamental good versus evil contest happening here. Like, I don't know if there's a point. Sometimes it feels almost like it could be, I'm not going to say a game, but I do think there's some element here of it being maybe it is something of a game, rigged in a certain way. But I think the objective could be a war on higher consciousness. And I don't mean to be new agey, but sometimes I think that the entire system is designed to keep the masses in a state of ignorance. And ignorance about what? And it's not just there to influence political opinions. You know, what's the point of this worldview warfare? And I think it might be putting some kind of, almost a governor, a constraint over certain areas of thought. I mean, think about the power disparity between an educated, informed elite and a mass of illiterate peasants. And that's a major power disparity. And I think there might be a new form of illiteracy today, or a comparative form of like ignorance in place here between the programmers, the programming class, and the programmed. I mean, I think it's pretty easy to point out the Truman Show that we're in, and how easily people fall for it, and how little evidence is required for any of its claims. I mean, we just lived through a Maverick. We just lived through it through Top Gun. I just saw Tom Cruise out there on some celebrity event, and someone, Synchro Morpheus, pointed this out. He said, it only makes sense that his movie would be heavily represented in a world stage psyop, because he's also, you know, obviously connected with the space program. He's going to space. So there's some kind of security clearance thing behind a lot of these actors where, yeah, they're in the know about a lot of the deep fakery at a very high level. Some of these actors have no plausible deniability. Kate Perry knows space is fake. But I don't think it's evenly distributed information. Like I don't think Miley Cyrus knows space is fake, for example. It's almost like it's like an elitist thing to be in the know. Like I think there's a sort of a status attached to participating in psyops as a celebrity, like Tom Hanks being the first celebrity to come down with COVID. We have various celebrities like who become the face of different events, and I think that that means they're part of it. They're part of the propaganda effort, and I think it's a status thing. Like I think crisis acting is the new Hollywood. 777 says it's a gamified realm. Yeah, I kind of think it's dark versus light, but only a small percentage are engaged. And I don't think that's overly simplifying things. I think that this notion that there's like moral relativity and evil is not an objective thing, it's just our opinion about things, and that ultimately none of this stuff matters. Like, I think that's convenient. That's how the game is rigged. But no, I do think there's a point here, but I don't have the answers. I haven't read any holy book that compels me. And to be quite honest, I think that the religions are there to keep you from figuring certain things out. I think that religions actually gatekeep God, so I don't trust any of them. And I trust even less the holy books, even if you take it outside of the religion. Like, I don't trust these things for the same reason that I don't trust the mainstream media and I don't trust alternative media. I think there's this kind of a parallel thing with religion where some people are like, well, I don't trust the mainstream religion. I don't go to church, but I do my own religion. It's like, that's like trutherism. I'm like, maybe we should just abandon a lot of these paradigms and go with what we can test and verify. Like, I'm advocating agnosticism. I'm not telling people what to think or believe, but I'm not starting with any preconceived notions that, because we live in a very subjective realm, and subjectivity is a weapon against us. We're hoodwinked. Society is hoodwinked. And the new hoodwink is the black screen. The hoodwink is the wool sack over the head of the uninitiated. And when you get in the club, they take the sack off your head, and then you're able to see the lights. They show you the light. That's what Illuminati means, the illuminated. You've been shown the light. And what is the light? The light is the information that, hey, everybody outside of there is in the dark. And we keep it that way. Jamarian May says, I recall Tim got physically sick from a computer virus. Yeah, that actually did happen. I remember. It was really strange, but I did get really sick. And I noticed my computer also had a virus and crashed. Same day. But I had also just gone to the Atomic Museum. And I visited some relics from the Trinity site. I thought maybe it was radiation sickness, which I don't believe in, but I do believe in psychosomatics, nocebo, placebo. That's why I'm trying, like, I like my chemtrail friends. I'm not against people just because they believe in chemtrails, but I'm saying your paranoia can literally give you chemtrail lung. Chemtrails may not exist, but chemtrail lung could exist. That's how it works. Your beliefs. Dirk Zink says, I think they love to deceive the masses. It's like a cat and mouse game for them. Yeah, that's hard to disagree. Duper's delight all the way up. And at this point, I just say fake until proven real. We've been vindicated. We've been saying that for years. And some people would say, you can't say it's all fake. I'm like, well, that's a straw man. We have criteria. We don't just say it's all fake. It has to be an extraordinary claim. So there are certain hallmarks of fakery. But now, in the age of deep fakes and the quality of deep fakes being what it is right now, yeah, it's safe to say it's fake until proven real. Jamarian May says, it looks like you've been targeted, Tim. And we already know this. We were targeted by some White House press corps Trump guy who's part of the QAnon psyop. And he stopped when we doxed him. And then he got this new job with Trump. But that kind of showed us that, okay, well, somebody pretty high up in government was assigned to shut down the IPS. And what he had done is he had contacted YouTube, pretending to be me, claimed my voice, and for a couple of years was able to copyright strike my live streams. And we had more than 150 YouTube channels before I put a stop to it. It took several lawsuits, it took some action from YouTube, and I'm still not done with the person. But at the end of it, I managed to get my original channel reinstated. But